What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Extremely excited today to talk about Andrew Yang's performance in last night's DNC town hall. Now, I could have made this video last night, but honestly, I was not really looking forward to watching this. I mean, climate change obviously is a huge deal, but it's always, to me, been one of those issues where it's like, I can do my part, but unless we have some major legislation or like a real political push to make something happen, there's not much the average person can do. Not to say that you can't make a difference, just that this is a really big issue. So with that said, I really wasn't looking forward to this that much. I really just wanted to see how Yang would perform. I don't even know if this town hall was like pre-planned or if this is really just a result of everything that's happening down in the Bahamas with the hurricane. So, you know, it's called Climate Crisis. I don't know. I found out about the town hall, wanted to check it out, wanted to see how Yang would do. He seems to do pretty well in those long form interviews. You know, he's had the Joe Rogan and the Ben Shapiro and all the long form interviews. I feel like he really performs well. So I thought giving him an opportunity to sit down and really explain his ideas would be at least beneficial, but him coming on at 5:40, I thought that would be an issue, but that's just my initial thoughts. That's just me going into it, right? I sit down, I watch it, and honestly, I'm blown away. Like, I've never watched anyone running for any office on a debate stage or anything like that really have a performance like what I saw last night. I've never really seen anybody command the room. I've never seen that much applause. I've never seen somebody look that confident. Like, I mean, he was just hitting question after question. To give you guys that frame of reference, right? I could have dropped this video last night, but after seeing Yang, I was like, you know what? Let me watch everybody else, because I don't know if it's just because he went early, or I don't know if everyone's going to get that kind of response. I wasn't sure what I was going to see, and I wanted to be able to kind of compare, you know, the way he answers things to everybody else. So I decided to wait. I did end up waiting to watch Kamala Harris. I saw Biden, Warren, Klobuchar. She actually did pretty well, by the way. I was really impressed. I'm not going to compare everybody, but I do feel like Klobuchar did pretty well, considering I never really paid attention to her at all. But you know, she seemed like she had like real policies, and she was like giving dates and saying this is the day 1, the day 2, the day 3. Like, that was impressive. I wanted to see the main candidates to see how Yang stacked up comparative to them, and after watching everybody, I'm even more impressed now. Man, the DNC really needs to clean this up. I don't know if it's the DNC or CNN. I'm sure it's both of them working together. The whole making this like easily accessible for everybody. I really thought they would have learned their lesson from the last election cycle on making this stuff available to people. Like, if people want to vote for Biden, fine, let them vote for Biden, but don't make it difficult for people to see all the other candidates. And I feel like, once again, that's what they're doing with the whole not streaming this on like YouTube or Xbox or whatever platform is like super easy for people to get to. They got to stop doing that. So let's just get into this. The first thing he was asked was about his first change to really start to combat the whole climate crisis. This is where the show really began. I always felt like Yang's performance in the interviews was different than the debates, because on the debates he kind of goes back to talking points, whereas when he's in like a free flow conversation, he's just talking, and he really makes everything make sense, and he makes it seem like he's actually engaged with the person he's talking to. And last night was the perfect blend of the two, because right off the bat, when he's asked about what his first policy is, he immediately goes into changing the scorecard. Instead of defaulting to GDP, we need to have a scorecard that includes climate change as a measure of success in this country. And that was just a beautiful setup and segue right into him talking about what we're incentivizing in this country. One of the things that Yang did really, really well last night compared to everybody else, Yang did not call this a result of corruption, which I think was very, very intelligent, because almost everybody else who wanted to attack the fossil fuel industry kept saying that, you know, this is corruption. Yang called it for what it is. This is the system that we have. Paying lobbyists and contributing to political campaigns, like, that's not corruption. That's the system that we have. Like, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. Because Yang was smart enough to do this, he was immediately able to point out that he wants to, you know, give the average American $100 per year to start contributing to political campaigns to wash the money out of politics. And of course, because he's changing the scorecard, we're going to be incentivizing industries for actually being more green and being more eco-friendly. Right off the bat, just a brilliant answer, really pulling everything together. And this really, for me, was just completely unexpected. I wasn't really expecting much from him. And admittedly, I hadn't really read his plan on climate change. Like I said, I was most interested in automation. But just seeing the way he was able to bring these things together was the first moment where I was like, okay, he's on to something. So he nails that one. He moves into the next question, which is about how he's going to help people who are currently affected by climate change. And again, this is a perfect setup for Yang, because unlike every other candidate up there, he's got UBI. which isn't a specific program. He's saying off the bat, I'm going to be giving you $12,000 a year anyway. And because of that, we don't have to worry about trying to figure out where we're going to get this money or how we're going to move it around, or is it a national emergency, or whether or not you qualify. Here's 12 grand upfront per adult to start changing your life. One of the biggest things that Yang consistently had in this town hall was his ability to give definitive yes or no answers. So many people went up there after him, and when asked yes or no, they just couldn't do it. They gave those typical politician stories where they start talking about, I met a guy in Wisconsin and he said, and it never goes anywhere. All it does is kind of confuse the person who asked the question. The audience kind of forgot that he never really answered the question in the first place. Yang consistently did not do that. He answered questions with a yes or no answer. Wolf follows up with, would you eliminate some subsidies? Yang, of course, is able to say yes. It's one of those things that every other candidate just isn't willing to do, or at least they're not willing to say it on stage. And this is his first major applause moment of the evening. Now, the next question wasn't, to me, particularly a great question, but asking Yang if it's the president's responsibility to make sure that we're preserving the planet for the future. If you don't know much about Oklahoma, you've probably heard of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They play in the Chesapeake Energy Arena. And down here, oil and gas dominates everything. A lot of people from the big cities don't really think about middle America, or the parts of America where oil and gas is a big deal. But around here, if you ask people about climate change, they're probably going to laugh at you. They're going to say, we don't care about climate. They don't care about climate change because it's such big business here. But the reality is, in the short time I've been here, I've experienced several significant weather events, from tornadoes to fairly frequent earthquakes. And even now, if you have that conversation, you bring up that it could possibly be from fracking, they're probably still going to deny it. But I say all of that because this question is more about the responsibility of the federal government to make sure that we are preserving our planet for the future. So if there's a federal mandate, the change will happen regardless. I'm only bringing this up because when other candidates were asked similar questions, a lot of them kind of responded that they wanted to leave things up to the state. But Yang, of course, knocked this one out of the park as well by basically saying that he wants a constitutional amendment that makes it the responsibility of the president to make sure that we're preserving the country for future generations. Now, I'm not going to go question for question. I'm going to kind of go down the line a little bit more. Most of the questions Yang was fairly comfortable answering simply because, again, he was willing to be definitive, he was willing to say, yes, we're going to go ahead and spend that money. Yes, it's something we need to do. Yang looks at the climate crisis as a crisis, not as something that we're working on or something that we can possibly do. He's looking at it and saying, we have to do it. The future of the planet depends on it. Whatever we have to spend, we'll do that. If we have to invest in new ideas, we have to do that. It doesn't matter what it costs. Let's make it happen. Now, I'm kind of skipping further down the line again, kind of grouping the questions together. There's a couple of questions where he's asked about, basically Americans having to change our way of life. Are we going to have to drive electric cars? Are we going to have to eat different foods? Are we going to have to get rid of this straw thing kept coming up? We need to get rid of plastic straws. I don't know if he was specifically asked about the straws, but basically on all of these questions, Yang pretty much said yes. Yang is kind of acting off of instinct. Like, is that something that he believes in? Yes, I'll totally do that. Is it something I don't believe in? I won't do it. You could see on Yang's face that it was just way easier for him because he was actually being sincere. Now, with that said, Yang was also careful because he knows a lot of people would say, oh, I don't want to have to do what this guy says. I don't trust the government or whatever. And he kind of said two things that were very, very smart. One, when talking about specifically the dietary thing, he mentioned that making these changes is going to really open up the business opportunities for small farmers, allowing them to be able to kind of offer, essentially farm to table solutions. You're actually going to be buying directly from the farmer who are raising the cattle. Again, one of the things about living in Oklahoma is that's kind of normal here. Like, a lot of people would just actually go out and they actually go on down and buy like a ton of meat from the farmer directly. Rural America has a lot of advantages that I really just didn't even know about. Then he was also smart to mention that this is America. We can't make people do what we want them to do, but we can make it extremely advantageous, easy, and we can incentivize the behavior that we want to happen. And of course, all of this while running that whole UBI in the back of your mind thinking, okay, well, it's not going to be devastating for someone to have to go from one way of life to another. So like I said, I don't want to go into every single response. I mean, honestly, you really just need to watch this thing for yourself. Going into this, I saw the format and I was like, it's long form talking, but you don't get to really see people go back and forth and kind of compare and contrast each other. But the one thing I really came to appreciate is because you're not being cut off by the moderator. Sometimes you kind of get into a fight with somebody, you have no chance of winning, but you just kind of go in there and you hope that somebody comes and breaks it up real quick. That's kind of how this went. The candidates that didn't have answers didn't have a bell. They didn't have a referee. They didn't have somebody pulling them off of the other person. They had to go out there and answer that question until they came to a complete thought. That again is why Yang excelled. He was able to give definitive responses. He was comfortable. He was knowledgeable. And basically, he was willing to say what other people weren't willing to say. By the way, I also just ordered my math hat, so it should be here soon. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like, subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video.